The first principle I want to talk about is motivation. Motivation is an incredibly important principle in filmmaking because it applies to everything, from lighting to sound to camera angles. A lot of times you'll hear people joking, oh, what's my motivation? Well, that's motivation for acting, which is the same thing. It all means, what's the reason? Why is something in the image? For example, I've got a bright light on this side of my face. What's the reason for that? Why is it motivated? In this case, it's motivated by that light over there. Now, this is an extreme example because this is what we call a practical source. The light that you see in the image is actually the light that's casting the light in the image, if that makes sense. Now, a practical source is usually more the exception than the rule. Generally speaking, if you're watching a movie or really even in a photograph, the light you see in the image is not the light that's actually casting the light. So for example, let's say I had a small desk lamp next to me. Now this casts a little bit of light. It could be a practical source to a limited degree, but let's say I had it about here. Then, if you didn't see the big light, you might well think that this light on my face was being caused by this little lamp. That means this light on my face is now motivated by this instrument right here. So that is, in a nutshell, motivated lighting. What's the reason for it? If you couldn't see the lamp at all, would you think there's a window there? Or would you think that really there's just a big light out of the frame? In this case, because I'm doing an instructional video, a big light out of the frame is okay. But if you're making a movie, or you're doing some kind of narrative, or maybe something a little more subtle, you're going to want to create the illusion of motivated light. It sort of makes everything make sense, and it also captures the aesthetic of filmmaking, which is life within sort of a perfect frame. The second principle I want to mention is the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid. There's sort of an aphorism I remember from film school. It said, if you see one shadow, it's a movie. If you see two shadows, it's TV. If you don't see any shadows, it's junk. And that basically comes from the fact that amateurs tend to overlight. They tend to use too many lights to fill in too many shadows, and they wind up with flat, featureless junk. Don't do that. Keep it simple. If you go to a big movie set, you'll generally see they have a couple of really big lights set up, and then they're modifying and flagging them off from different areas to create the pools of light and shadow that they want to make the contrast in the scene to create the aesthetic that they want. As I mentioned before, there's no one right way to light anything. However, within whatever style you're doing, you can always pare it down to the essentials and keep it simple. The third principle I want to discuss really isn't the principle at all, but it's the difference between lighting for a moving image and a still image. This program is designed for photographers, so most of you who are watching are probably already pretty comfortable with lighting with natural light and with strobes. What you have to understand then is that the aesthetics of lighting don't change when you start shooting video. Your aesthetics, whatever they are, hard light, soft light, high key, low key, none of that changes. The sun doesn't change, you're still using lamps, you're still modifying them. The only thing that changes are the instruments, and because of the instruments being changed, there are three factors you need to remember. The first factor is quite straightforward. It's just that you're going to have to adapt to shooting at lower light levels. If you're used to shooting with strobes, you can hit f8 or f11, f16 whenever you want. Shooting with little tungsten lights like this, not going to happen. The second factor you have to keep in mind is audio. If you were thinking about using the modeling lamps in your strobes as lights for your video projects, you'd better make sure they don't have loud fans in them. A lot of lights that are made for photography have really convenient cooling fans that make the lights totally unusable for any kind of motion picture project. Last but not least, let me mention that these things are called hot lamps for a reason. They're freaking hot. Not only do they put out a lot of heat, which can raise the temperature on your set to an uncomfortable degree, pun intended, but they can also be a liability issue. On a lamp like this, the bulb, of course, is extremely hot, but the casing gets hot too, and it's very easy for someone to burn themselves on it. Now, the worst thing about these kind of lights is that the bulbs can pop quite easily. And when I say pop, I mean explode and throw shards of very hot glass surprisingly far. Always read all the safety instructions with any lamp you buy. And never ever handle the bulbs with your fingers because they leave oil on there that can contribute to the bulb popping. Also, Always be sure to use the safety screen that comes with your lamp. If your lamp doesn't come with a safety screen, buy one, or else keep some diffusion or something else clipped over it so you don't have a naked bulb just sitting out there as a safety hazard. Be safe. Film style lighting and photo lighting overlap when it comes to aesthetics and diverge a little bit when it comes to technique. The good news is that your film lighting will help your photos and your photography will help your films. The more you learn, the better all your projects will be.